Hi, Pastor David Tart here with another Words for Sunday. I absolutely love doing these videos. It just helps me. I don't know if it helps you. Hopefully it does. But it helps me to really get focused, especially on these weeks like this week when I'm preaching. Gets me in the focus, in the zone of what we're going to be doing on Sunday. And I get to sort of dwell in these texts all week, and it's really kind of fun for me. I'm a theologian at heart, and theology, that is talking about God, is my thing. Well, this coming Sunday is a real special Sunday. It's a feast day. It's called All Saints Day, and All Saints Day is that day of the year when we honor all the saints. Its roots are really in the Roman Catholic Church in the 600s when they started having more saints than they had days. Each saint had his or her day. Well, the Pope decided, hey, let's just put everything together into one day called All Saints Day. So it was this day in which they celebrated these special saints in the church. And as you know, as Roman Catholics, they have their own unique view of what saints are. Saints are models of faith. Saints are people that you try to be, heroes, if you will. But even more so, they gain on a really almost intercessory way of accessing God. You would access God through the window of the saint, because that saint really understood you and could plead your cause to God. Yeah, I know their theology of sainthood has kind of changed through the years, but still, for most Roman Catholics, today is to honor all the great heroes of the faith. Well, Martin Luther came along, and he was born in that kind of church, and he lived in that kind of church, kind of sainthood, and he had his saints, and he would pray to the saints and all the time to intercede for him with God. But the more Martin Luther began to read about Scripture, he began to see that the scriptural view of sainthood is really not that. St. Paul calls people saints, but he doesn't just call special people saints. He calls everybody saints. And Martin Luther began to think about, what does it mean then to be a saint? And of course, being the wonderful biblical scholar he was and the great articulator of faith, he says, sainthood is not something we earn. Sainthood isn't something we achieve. Sainthood, and this is extremely Lutheran, is a gift of God. Jesus on the cross makes all of us saints. And Luther would say, yeah, it's good to model ourselves after people, look up to people who have been really good examples of what it means to walk the talk. But when it comes to their sainthood and our sainthood, we have the same sainthood. We're all in the same boat. All of us are in the same boat. We're all saints, not because of what we do or what we achieve, but because of what Jesus Christ has achieved for us on the cross. And if we look at sainthood, it's not just in these special people who have achieved some kind of spiritual awakening, but it's in each of us. And if we will look at each other, we will see saint. In fact, I'll go far as to say that when it comes to sainthood for Lutherans, it's those who really have experienced the grace and love of God. The ones who have been overwhelmed by the unconditional favor of God toward them, and they see how much they are loved and cherished by God in spite of their sins. And they don't look to their good works. They only look to the good work of Jesus, and they live out this grace and love in their lives. And so on All Saints' Day for Lutherans, we love All Saints' Day. Why? It's because the day in which we celebrate our sainthood, but also the sainthood of those around us. And you're right. Maybe they didn't live a perfect life. Oh, no, I know they didn't live a perfect life. But they are still treasured saints of God, as we all will be. And we all dwell in God's rich heaven, whatever that is. And so on this Sunday, I'm asking people just to send me a picture and a name of someone who've died who is a saint to you, someone whom you really touched your life, who really lived out the grace of God, or you experienced God's grace in that person. I mean, just it could be a parent, family member, maybe a dear friend. If you'll send me that picture, you will at admin@towardthedawn.net. It's our normal email. Send me that email, the picture of that person, and I'll put them in a memory slideshow, which will be part of our worship service on Sunday. And what's so cool about this memory slideshow is that we show it every year. So in many ways, our memory slideshow will become a cemetery type of thing for Toward the Dawn, a place where we will, theoretically at least, see the pictures of all the people who have touched the people who have been connected to Toward the Dawn. And we'll have this great, wonderful vision of who we are. And even ourselves will one day have our pictures with all the other saints. So anyway, it's pretty cool. So if you'll send me those pictures, I'll be sure to put them in the slideshow. Now, we're going to look at the text for this Sunday. And as I look at the texts really are great funeral texts. I mean, these are the texts that I love to go to when I'm presiding or leading the funeral. I just love these texts because they speak of our future. They speak a wonderful word of hope and vision of what we have to look forward to as Christians. Now, we are never, pie in the sky, sweet by and by kind of Christians, as if everything has to do with the future. But still, as Christian people, as people of the resurrection, we believe in our future with Jesus, whatever that may look like. And in our readings for this Sunday, we have a vision of it, especially this Isaiah. Now, Isaiah, that book of the Bible, in the Old Testament, Isaiah was a prophet. Well, probably a series of prophets. As we look at the book of Isaiah from a historical point of view, we can see that there are probably 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 Isaiahs, because each section of Isaiah seemed to be written to a specific time in the people of God's history. So we can kind of see 3 Isaiah, and that's kind of cool in a way, because it means that this book of Isaiah was the go-to book, the go-to prophet. That the prophet Isaiah lived on through the word, right? We love that. And he kept on speaking through the people who would pick up Isaiah, say, let's write some more things that Isaiah would write, because we don't want to give up his hope, his vision, his power to transform us and encourage us. So they just kept writing about Isaiah. And we can look at Isaiah 25. We can say this text was probably written at a time when things were, again, it was extremely difficult. There might have been a famine. Some of us think there might have been a famine going on, because it's this vision that Isaiah puts forward to the people, their vision of their future. He was calling them to is, remember, there's going to be a day when God will prepare a great feast for all of us. And there's going to be a great day when that beautiful image of the shroud of death will be removed from us, and death will be no more. I mean, he just writes poetically and powerfully these images of God's future. And it's just, God's going to destroy even death. I mean, wow. That death is not going to have the last word, he says. The great future for us is a feast of joy and life. And I don't know how that's going to happen. Isaiah didn't know how it's going to happen, but he knew that the kind of God we believed in would make that happen. The God who called them and formed them and brought them out of Egypt would not abandon them, but God is giving them this hope during their very difficult time of the great feast to come. And how powerful that is, especially when losing a loved one. Because lots of times that loss is clouded in sadness and grief and pain and misery and so hard. But we as Christian people bring the vision of the feast to come. Great words. I'm going to love hearing Isaiah read. In Psalm 24, it's really has that great promise in 24:5 that though we all receive a blessing, that's the hope. Even through the trials, we have this promise, and we can, and the psalmist just kind of captures those feelings of hope. And I hope you'll read Psalm 24 this week and enjoy it. It's this fantastic psalm to have in our hearts. Again, the psalms speak to our hearts. Pastor Goodson loves the psalms. Why? Because they speak to how we feel. The struggles, the joys, the hopes that we long for. And they're a great way of just getting it out. The feelings. Psalm 24. Don't miss it. It's going to be great. Great read. And then we have Revelation 21. Oh, this is really a cool reading. I mean, because when the writer of Revelation, John, was writing about the future, he had this great vision of a wedding. A wedding. When the woman marries the man and the man marries the woman, and the woman is dressed in her finery, and the groom is dressed up in his finery or her finery, whatever you want to do about marriage, I'm good with it. But still, it's this beautiful, wonderful image of two people coming together in joy, in celebration, in beauty. That's often, at least in the Southern tradition, why we dress up our deceased in beautiful dresses and suits, because we have this wonderful vision that they're dressing up for their wedding day, when there'll be this great union of God, and there'll be no more sorrow and no more crying and no more misery, no more loneliness. We're going to have the great marriage of God's goodness with us. Wonderful image. So kind of when we die, we just say, well, I'm just getting ready for my marriage, my wedding day. That kind of excitement. It's beautiful. I mean, it's very touching reading. I mean, I don't know who's going to be reading Sunday, but it's really, I'd get into the lottery for it, because it's such a great reading. So beautiful. Revelation 21. And then we also have good old John 11, the raising of Lazarus. This is probably where I'm really kind of thinking hard about. That's where I'm going to go in my sermons, John 11. I know. Everybody knows I love Mark. But listen, until Luke comes along. But anyway, John is so rich. And this story of raising Lazarus from the dead is powerful, because in our verse we'll be reading this week is one of the shortest verses in the Bible. Jesus looks around and sees these people mourning the death of their friend, their brother, and they're crying. We know what that grief feels like. You've walked in those rooms, I bet. I have. You feel so helpless. And Jesus has the shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. He knows what it's like to feel that grief. As Christians, we don't deny grief. We don't try to put, honey and jelly over it. We don't. We embrace grief. Grief is tough. It's okay not to know. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to be sad. It's okay. It's part of being human. Jesus was human. Remember in John, we always read John with the image of the Word made flesh dwell among us. Well, here's proof positive. The Word became flesh, and he lived in the grief. He lived in the sadness. He dwelt in that sadness. He's been there. He's done that. He knows the grief. He loved Lazarus too. But it's also a great vision of Jesus doing something about it. It's just, I mean, I love this story. I mean, because Jesus goes to the tomb and he looks into the darkness, into death itself. He spits in the eye of death. And in the face of death's hold upon Lazarus and his gripping grief that was all around him and people wailing and sadness, he looks at that tomb and he says all those powerful words. And I can't wait to read them on Sunday. Lazarus, come out. Come out of that. You don't belong there. You don't belong in grief. You don't belong in death. You don't belong in sadness. You don't belong in all the pain and misery. It's like, come out of that. Come out. You belong in life. You belong in love. You belong in joy. You love. That's what you, Jesus, if you ask me, okay, what's the resurrection about, Pastor Tart? It's about coming out. Coming out of the death, the sadness, the despair. Come out. I don't know if you're listening to this video or not. I don't know where you are in your spiritual life. I don't know what you're dealing with. But if you're feeling stuck, okay, you feeling trapped, come out of there. You don't belong there. You need to find a way out. Go find a grief counselor. Go talk to somebody. Pray about it. Do whatever you can. Get out of there. You don't belong there. You belong to the people who love you. You belong to the people of hope. You belong to your future. I'm looking forward to that sermon. Man, I hope you come. But also, I'm thinking another great part of that text. I hope you read it at the very end. After Jesus commands Lazarus to come out of there, he comes out in his grave clothes and he's all bound up. Oh, another great word from Scripture. Oh, so sweet. He looks at his friends, Lazarus' friends. He turns to them, and he says, unbind him and let him go. Unbind him. The role, the job, the mission, the work of friends, family is to help people unbind themselves from grief and loss and death. I know I've walked the walk with a lot of people who have struggled with intense loss and grief, and they always talk about the dear friend, the family member who walked with them, who showed up for them. And that's what Toward the Dawn's trying to do. We're trying to show up for people. And let me tell you, I've heard stories of people who've been unbound by what we're doing. Because we don't want anybody stuck in any cave. We don't want anybody stuck in any cave. We want them in the light. We want them in the love of Jesus Christ. So anyway, I am very excited about Sunday. And remember, send that picture. Also, bring a candle. Bring a candle. And you'll have opportunity to speak the name of someone who's died this year who you won't remember on this Sunday. You'll have opportunity to do that. And we're going to ring a bell for all those who we've been praying for this year, because it's our good work to unbind people. God bless you, and I really look forward to seeing you on Sunday. Bye-bye.